See a few people on. Got a few minutes to get going here.
Yes, apologies everyone. My countdown is a little bit off compared to the time on the clock. But feel free to pop a hello in the chat box to make sure you can find that at the bottom and let us know where you're tuning in from. Alicia, hello. I'm in Lincoln. Thanks for joining us. Rod in Southwest Nebraska. Hello, hello.
Zoe and Tanya, you said you're coming to Tech Edge. Is that what I heard?
Yes, we are coming to Tech Edge on the 5th. Open, see, there's Rusty. All right, well, everyone, my countdown is off, so it's noon, so we're just gonna go ahead and get started so I don't take up too much time of the hour. But today we are going to be talking about strengthening cybersecurity defenses. So thank you to everyone tuning in live, and of course, thank you to Justin for being here to present today. So we'll go ahead and get started. Before I switch to the next slide, I have a video from our sponsors and partners at Center for Rural Affairs. Just a quick message from their team member, Nicole. So I'm going to play that for you guys quick.
Hello, and thank you for joining today's webinar, sponsored by the Center for Rural Affairs. My name is Nikki Chitwood, and I'm the Panhandle Loan Specialist. As one of the many services we provide, I am here to introduce to you our lending services. When a bank can't help you with your dreams of homeownership or growing a business, the Center for Rural Affairs can. We offer coaching and financing to help you become a homeowner and start or grow a sustainable business. Please feel free to contact me at 308-631-0157, or you can visit cfra.org for more information.
All right, so as always, we are so thankful to partner and have Center for Rural Affairs as a sponsor for Grow Nebraska. So as she said, you can contact her at her phone number here or her email, or you can go to cfra.org for more information. And then our featured sponsor is Aloe Fiber Nebraska, so a huge thank you to them. And our featured member is Cracklin Kirk's Fireworks, and they have been a Grow Nebraska member since 2019. And I've said this in my past webinars, if you're looking for fireworks, July is around the corner, and he is your go-to guy. Highly recommend. And then this week's presenter is Justin Dempsey with Next Tech. So I'll go ahead and stop my screen share. And if you have any questions for him, just be sure to find that chat box or the Q&A section down below and ask any and all questions. But I'll pass it over to you.
All right. So I'm going to have a slide deck to share with you guys. Hopefully everybody can see that okay.
Yep.
Start with who I am. I've been with Next Tech for 19 years. Before that, I worked in medical IT for 7. Before that, I worked for the state of Kansas. So I span multiple sectors. I'm old, got more than 30 years in the field. My big responsibilities today are security related to Rural Telephone Next Tech's ISP, internet provider, telco, and then as a company. And we're also a managed service provider. And so I help our business customers with their cybersecurity and help them navigate through what an incident is and how to recover from it. So I start here. The reason I like to start here is growing up, my dad was military. I grew up all over the place. We spent a lot of time on the coast. And as a little kid, I was a fish. I spent a lot of time in the water. And one day something bumped my leg. I came flying out of the water and said, "Dad, there's something in there." I said, "Don't worry about it. It's probably just a sand shark." What I got out of that at 6 years old was there are sharks living where I swim. And I say this because before that, I knew they were there, but you don't really know until you run into one. And I bring this up because I keep hearing out here in Western Kansas and into Nebraska, they're not out here. Why would they come out here? We're not big enough for them to care about. I'm going to tell you the sharks are in the water and they are here and they don't care where you live. So I'll start with what we're seeing. I started keeping track in 2022, and that year we had 10 cyber incidents that I helped people with. And you can kind of see the breakdown here. In 2023, there's a huge jump. We had 46 incidents that I helped customers with. And depending on what sector you are in, you can see it here. Biggest sector is small and medium business, followed by government, finance and healthcare, all in the same. We had 8 businesses or 8 incidents that had to move to forensics because they had data that was lost or potentially lost that was regulated. In 2024 so far, well, every time I update my slide, it's out of date. There's 22 now. And so we're going to surpass what we had last year. I see just a comment. I expect the numbers to increase and surpass our 2024 numbers. There's just a huge uptick in the cybersecurity risks and the attacks happening across all the sectors. Incident types, the biggest thing is they start with the credential harvesting. Once they get your information, then they can use that to attack other people through an email compromise. 90+% of the attacks are financially motivated, so they're looking for some way to get money from you. We see a lot of technical support scams, remote access. We've seen several ransomware and just a mix of others. So IC3, they kind of keep track of holistically the cyber and where it's at and the complaints. So when you look, you can see the huge uptick from 2019 to 2023. We've doubled the number of complaints, but we're not quite 4 times the losses. Everybody moved when we had COVID-19 hit, everybody moved to a dispersed workplace. We started using more cloud resources and we moved away from the traditional protection model, and it made it easier for them to start those attacks. So let's talk about what can be done. Traditional IT model was you built that castle and you put the moat around the castle and all your defenses are outward facing. And like I said, when we moved to a dispersed workplace, it changed things. The bad guys know it's pretty hard to come in and beat on that castle wall. But what they found is, well, sharks with laser beams, forgot that one's in there. It's not as funny if you can't see it and I can see your faces. What do you put in the moats? Well, what they've done is they've started attacking end users. And the reason they've started attacking end users is if they knock on the door, most end users will open it. And it's much easier to get past the perimeter defense if they can do this. You know, and so 90% of the attacks nowadays, they start aiming at the end user instead of trying to attack the servers directly. because they know it's just easier. I keep popping my screen up. The slides, if you reach out to Rusty when we're done, he will have a copy of the slide deck, so he will share it with you. On the end user attacks, phishing is the #1 attack. Most of the compromises that we've seen or the incidents, they started in some way, shape, or form with the phishing email. And then what happened past that depended on the attacks, the methods they used. We see a lot of password reuse. And if you're reusing your passwords, please quit. The normal person has between 5 and 7 passwords. And we just can't continue that process. If you have consumer passwords and you bring them into the workplace, so the passwords you have at home and you bring them to the workplace, understand you're really at risk, because there's a lot of consumer products that have been hacked and the consumer websites that have been hacked. And if you're reusing those passwords, they'll associate them with your work pretty quick. Credential harvesting, where they get your username and passwords, either through a phishing attack or through password reuse. And then we see a lot of just not questioning. You know something doesn't look right, but you go, it's okay. I'm not going to worry about it. So some of the things we're going to talk about today: why password practices are important, understanding of business email compromise, the benefits of multi-factor authentication, and separation of business and personal. So I like to have a little fun with my slide decks. I like to have a few things to keep it light. I put this slide up on a presentation when I was in front of a company, and everyone in the room turned to one user and said, "That's you." And it told me a lot about their company. Number one, their practices aren't very good. Two, everybody knows everyone's passwords. The gentleman's response was classic. His response was, "But I got 2 dogs." And I just really can't argue with that. So I started playing a game called Guess Your Password. And it's a little harder to do on a webinar, but I will go through a few, and if it rings a bell with you, give me a heads up or a thumbs up in the chat, and then go change your password. If you don't have to change your password, it is probably your child or your animal's name. It's in there. A birth date of a family member or yours. If it has to be changed, if it's an annual, it's probably got the year in it. If it's quarterly, it's probably got the season in it. If it's monthly, it's either 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 through 12, or it's the month. And the other thing I see a lot of people doing, if you have to change them on a regular basis, is reuse the same password, add a number to the end. It's password 1, password 2, password 3. I'm not hitting anything here. Nobody's admitting to it, huh? So let's talk about phishing. In 2022, for the first 8 months, there's 250 million attacks reported. In 2023, for quarter 3, just for that 3-month period, there's not quite double the attacks. And so again, you can see this is just really shooting up. The bigger concern is where the attacks are coming from. In the past, if they wanted to attack you, they'd build a server, then they'd use that to email and spam people to start those attacks. The automated systems can handle that pretty well because they know this email server exists in Joe's basement and it's not a legitimate data source. And so those automated systems were very good at protecting in that situation. What the bad guys have done is they've moved to legitimate data sources. So now you see this huge increase in them coming out of Microsoft, Amazon, and Google locations. Roughly a third of them are there. And this is important because the automated tools can't detect or can't stop. If it's a compromised email account for somebody you were doing business with yesterday, the automated tools aren't going to stop that compromised email coming in today because you were talking to them yesterday. It relies more on the end user and them taking a look and understanding what's happening. The other thing we're seeing is the uptick in 0-hour threats. So the bad guys are taking advantage of 0-hour threats. A 0-hour threat is when a new vulnerability is found in the wild, the next 60 minutes. That's a 0-hour threat. And it shows you the speed that the bad guys are moving. when you're seeing half of the attacks taking advantage of these 0-hour threats, these guys are moving much faster than the industry is. And it makes it hard to defend with the automated tools. Again, relying more on the end users to know what's right and wrong. Anybody remembers these days? You know, these were fun days. I wish they were back because it's very easy to spot these fishes. But since the bad guys have changed their habits, when we do our training, we have to change ours too. Used to be that in fishing training, if you weren't catching anyone, that was awesome. Everybody was happy. It's good. Now they're saying, well, okay, are you asking the right questions? Are you growing them at the same rate that the bad guys are? If you're asking a kindergartner what 1 + 1 is, that's fine. If you're asking a college graduate what 1 + 1 is, you're not growing them. And the bad guys are going to take advantage of them. So in your fishing training, you really should be seeing somebody getting caught every quarter or every time you do a fishing training. And that gives you an opportunity to do some training and grow them as a company or as an employee, where in the past it was just we didn't catch anyone yay. So we're going to talk about a business email compromise. And what I want to start with, business email compromise is using an email system to attack you or using your email system to attack somebody else. So using the email system holistically. Then I want to mention vendor email compromise, because a vendor email compromise is somebody you are doing business with, either your customer or one of your vendors has been compromised and they're using that relationship to attack you. And so it's much more directed than just a standard. In 2024, all the successful fishes I've seen have been vendor email compromises. The email has come from somebody that they had a relationship with. So let's talk about business email compromise versus ransomware. In 2022, roughly 2,300 ransomware cases. At the same time, there's 21,000 business email compromises that were reported. So when you're looking at ransomware losses, 34 million, business email compromise losses, roughly 2.7 billion. And so a huge difference in scale. Everybody hears about ransomware because it makes the news and they're very big cases. I'd equate them to a bank robbery. You know, you don't see them as often compared to business email compromises. Look at them as a liquor store robbery. Not as often do you see them in the news because they happen so much, nobody's going to put them there. But there's a lot more of them. So again, with the IC3, if you are worried about ransomware, I tell you to look at your sector. Healthcare is the #1 hit, followed by critical manufacturing and then government. So if you're in these, you really want to pay attention to the ransomware side. And if you want to dig deeper on concerns with that, reach out. I am happy to come have a conversation. So we'll talk about a day in the life. This is us as Next Tech. So a day in September 2023, we get roughly 20,000 emails coming in. Out of those, 3,000 of those are an attack on us as a company. And so 1 out of 7 is an attack on us. Some things to look for in emails to make sure we don't get compromised. I'm going to talk about some of that as we come through here. So if you don't have the answers when we're done, we'll talk. So roughly 1 in 7 is an attack on us as an organization. And I can tell you, if I looked at your email, it'd probably be pretty close. And when we look at the top attacked people, 3 of the top 5 are C-level, the other 2 were not. Human resources and accounting finance. And so they know where the money is, they know how to get to it. What do those look like out of the 3,000? The biggest thing we see is identity impersonation, pretending to be somebody they aren't. Either they've compromised somebody else's account, or they have a relationship, or they're saying they're like our CEO and they want us to do something. The other thing we see is credential phishing. So they're going to send us something that they want us to click on, and it's going to take us somewhere to log in, and they're going to take our credentials, our username and password. Things I don't like, I mean, biggest thing on it that just doesn't sit well with me, and of course it's the bad guys, the emails are branded. So they're using our logo to attack our customers. Pretty easy for them to go figure out that if you live in this area of the United States, you might be a customer of this person. And so they'll make it look pretty official. If you're a big organization, roughly 2/3 of them are going to experience a supply chain. So when you look at those attacks coming in, those phishing attacks, 1 in 4 is open and 15% replied to. My guess is you guys are in the same boat we're in. We're under 500, and it gets worse. 1 in 3 attacks are open. 1 in 4 attacks are replied to. So they're successful in phishing 1 out of 4 people. So I'm going to walk through a few of these, and these are people that I've helped with incidents, and these are actual incidents that have occurred. First one, this user received an email from a compromised family member on their business email. So they were used to receiving personal email on their business account. This compromised family member sent them an attachment that led them to a credential harvesting site, and they put their credentials in. The accounts didn't have multi-factor authentication. So what they found, they had to perform forensics because the company had regulated data. They found that they lost some of that regulated data. And then they found that their account, after it had been compromised, was used to attack other people that they did business with. So they were in a reporting situation because they lost data that was regulated. They did come in and implement multi-factor authentication and password policies, and they implemented a data retention policy for their email. But at that point in time, I mean, the horses are already out of the barn. So this one's in the news. It's a couple of years old. I like it because it's a good example of some of the things we see. This vendor switched banks and requested to have the automatic payment information updated. The client got an email on it. They confirmed the email came from the known vendor contact's account. The client updated the payment information and made payments totaling $1.7 million. And then they got an overdue notice. So the question I ask people, and let's see if you guys are paying attention, who's at fault? The vendor got compromised, and their email was used to redirect the payments. The customer made the payments. Who's at fault? Anyone? The customer, the vendor, you both are right. The thing they decided was, even though the vendor's email was compromised, who should have been in the best situation to understand this was wrong? And since the customer did not have a fallback method to verify this account change, and no, responding to the email, is this legitimate, is not a valid method, they also held them accountable too. So you should have some kind of written policy or procedure that if there is a banking change or a direct deposit change, that it can't just come in through an email. So if you get an email for this request, you pick up the phone, you call the vendor or the person or whatever and say, okay, let's make sure this is legitimate. And if you don't have that, then you're going to share liability when that happens. Side notes on email. Customer's email was compromised, and they had over 10 years worth of email stored on the server that they didn't even know about. The email account was a generic account that belonged to the position title and not the person that was in it. And 3 people had been in that position in the last 10 years. So they didn't realize that there was 10 years worth of email that they couldn't see. but the threat actor had access to all 10 years. And when they had to do forensics, all 10 years worth of email was in the scope of the forensics, and they had to report on it. So credential harvesting, kind of talk about this a little bit. Again, I like to have a little fun with it. Time to change your passwords. Here's a change sheet. Tell me what you want your new password to be. And I hate to tell you this, I was in a group having a conversation, and their ISP, they were using the ISP's email. Their ISP said, yeah, you guys really should change your passwords. Go ahead and put it in an email to me what you want your new passwords to be, and we'll make it happen. Please don't do that. So when the credential harvesting comes, it's typically going to be some kind of phishing campaign. You'll get an email coming in with a link saying, hey, here's your document. Here you've been added to a team. Here's a fax message. Here's a voicemail. Click here and go. The other thing that they get these from is password dumping. So if you save your passwords in your browser, if you log in through your browser and it says, do you want me to remember you? And you say yes, then it saves your password in your browser, and that puts it at risk. So here's kind of a quick sample here. Hey, if you don't verify your email, we're going to delete your account. Click here and verify it. Okay. And when you click it, it goes. It's going to look just like a Microsoft 365 login, but it's not. And they're going to have your user ID and your password. Rule of thumb, only about 5% of people in any organization will ever have to click on a link and put in their credentials. So if you tell your people, if they click on a link and it asks them to sign in, tell them no. That's a good way to start keeping them safe. Two years ago, they tried to address a lot of these phishing attacks. And what we did is we implemented multi-factor authentication. And so it's something I know and something I have. And we said that will save us from all these credential harvesting, because they may get our username and password, but they won't have our multi-factor authentication. So the bad guys changed their attack methods, and they moved to what's called an adversary in the middle attack. And so what happens now is you click on the link, it takes you to a website that's hosted on the bad guy's computer. You feed the credentials to it. He passes them on to Microsoft or to the legitimate site. The legitimate site comes back and asks for the multi-factor authentication request. He asks you for it, and when you provide it, he sends it back to the site. And since his machine is the one who sent it to the site, it's the one that is authenticated with the multi-factor. And it creates a token on his workstation that prevents him from having to provide multi-factor again for 30, 60, 90 days. And so these attacks have really impacted the use of multi-factor authentication. Still use it, but don't rely on it as the only protection. Again, I like to share some things that hopefully you'll take home and share with others. And if you don't get much else from them, little things like this are worthwhile. Technical support scams. These we see either through a phishing email, you'll click on something, or you might be typing in a website and you misspell it, and you'll get a big pop-up on your screen going, hey, you're in trouble. You've got a virus, sirens going off, flashy lights. You better do something quick or you'll be in trouble. Call us and we'll help you. Here's our number. So this is a user that went through this. They received the pop-up. They contacted the number and they allowed the bad guy on. And the bad guy, while he was in there fixing his machine, used what's called Redline Password Stealer and scraped all his saved passwords out of his browsers. He got a call the next day from this financial company saying, hey, there's a transaction for $10,000 that went out last night. We saw another one trying to go out this morning. We don't feel that's you. Can you talk to us about it? Did you do that? And he said no, so they stopped it. So the thing is I talked to this guy and he said, it was the best customer support that I've ever had. I called the number. They're very pleasant to work with. They explained every step that they're doing. They said, here's how you help me get you on your computer. Oh, and I'm here and I'm doing this and I'm doing that. They got the messages to go away. They said, thank you. Have a nice day. Said it was a great customer support experience. And while they were on there, they just took everything from them. Smishing and whaling. So when I think of these, I think of that. But smishing is using SMS texting to attack you. Typically, they're pretending to be somebody in a position of authority. They'll ask you to keep the request confidential, and it'll have the sense of urgency. Hey, this is your boss. I'm going into a meeting with so-and-so. I forgot to get them a birthday present. Can you go get me a gift card and just snap me a picture of it? By the way, don't tell anyone, it's a surprise. And so using that method to come after you is no different than using phishing. And if you have anyone in your organization that is used to doing that type of roundabout thing, you need to talk to them and say, hey, let's follow process. Whaling, typically in a whaling situation, they pretend to be a person in authority, and they use that authority to get you to jump. They don't want you questioning, hey, this is your boss. I said, do it now. Get it done. I don't care about the process or anything else. I'm your boss. I told you what I wanted done. Let's make it happen. So this is an email from our CEO saying, hey, I want to change my banking information. I have tried the online portal. I'm not doing that again. Can I just send you a voided check? Last question. What am I making? But they're relying on people not questioning the CEO of the organization. And so again, you need to have some kind of process and procedure that you follow to double check these banking request changes. You can see here, even though it says Jimmy Todd, that's not coming from Jimmy Todd. Multi-factor authentication, pretty simple. Something I know and something I have. I know my password. I've got my cell phone and I text a message to it, or I have an authenticator app on my cell phone, or I've accepted a multi-factor authentication token on my machine. Again, that is created when I sign in, and it'll ask to remember me, and I say yes. So it won't ask me for multi-factor authentication until the token expires. Some other thoughts to share with you. If you've ever been to a prairie dog town, you'll see that they have a sentry out there. And that sentry, when it sees danger, it starts barking. And pretty soon the whole town is barking. And so that sentry raises the awareness of everyone in the group. And so it's very important when you're thinking about it, because if 1 in 4 people are going to fall for a fish, 3 of them did not. And if those 3 would start saying, oh man, look at this. You can tell it's a fish. Look right here. Or, oh, we just got a whole phishing attack coming in. It raises the awareness of everyone else in the group. Everyone in the workplace that hears it is now on alert, and it'll make it a safer workplace. Midwest beliefs. We are at risk here because we're very trusting. We build relationships on a handshake. We'll give you the shirt off our back, and we expect everyone else to behave the same. At the end of the day, the bad guys are counting on that, and they're taking advantage of it. So if you see something, say something. This is important because most ransomware attacks The attack doesn't happen when the ransomware starts. The attack happens 3 to 6 months previous, and they're in your network and they're doing things. And you may see something and you go, huh, that's weird, but you never say anything. Or you see that phishing attack coming in and you go, huh, that's weird. Oh, well, if you don't share it, then people aren't aware it's out there. Here's some tools for home use. Have I been pwned? You can put your email address in there and it'll tell you what breaches it's been part of. And it'll tell you what they got. And again, we're creatures of habit, 5 to 7 passwords. They'll say, hey, on this breach, they got your password. You need to think about what other accounts do I use the same password on and go get them changed. Fast People Search is a fuzzy logic search engine. And it's one that the bad guys use to get your phone numbers. So if I want to use an SMS attack, but I don't have your phone number, I can type your name in there where I think you live. It'll pop up like the last 5 or 6 phone numbers that have been associated with you. And I can send an SMS message to all of them. And the only one who's going to engage me is the person who has the number I care about. Bitwarden is a password manager. So if you are uncomfortable with long passwords because you forget them, Bitwarden allows you to have those long passwords and keeps them in a safe manner. Then there's a couple documents from the FTC. The second one is about credit freezes. And if you do not freeze your credit, something you should consider. Again, the majority of these attacks are about moving money, and they need some way to do it. One of the things that they do is they will open a new bank account in your name and move the money through that before it goes overseas. And so by locking your credit or putting your credit freeze on, it makes it harder for the bad guys to move money. OpenDNS. DNS is like a map of the internet where you can type in google.com and it knows where it actually exists in the internet. OpenDNS is an overlay of that map and it says where all the bad neighborhoods are. And so where it knows the bad neighborhoods, when you try to get to one, it'll go, well, I don't think that's really where you're wanting to go. And it'll help block that traffic. It's not foolproof, but it's another layer and it is free for home use. Everything I've said, I like to stop and end on a pleasant note. So I bring some puppies to you and I'm going to stop sharing and say, what kind of questions do you have for me? And if someone's talking, I can't hear you.
Yes, any questions? Please put them in the chat box. I think I need to do some password work. That's for sure.
Well, hopefully this is what you were looking for.
Yes, no, this was great. Oh, someone said very
Okay.
good. Yes.
And if you guys have questions or you want to engage us, Rusty put his information in there. And, reach out to him. We can schedule some time. If I need to come out and have a conversation with your business, I'd be happy to.
It's like,
so the spam email, yes, I would share it. The more you share these things, because like I said, if you're an organization with 4 people, chances are one person's going to fall for it. So talk about these things. Make fun of them. Make it fun. Oh my gosh, look at this. Our boss sent this. Do you think he'd do that? Keep it humorous instead, so it doesn't feel like somebody's getting called out, but it'll raise everyone's awareness.
yeah, because we've even noticed with like social media, we did a giveaway not too long ago and the scammers got to it and messaged one of the people that entered for it and got their credit card information. So
Yep.
gotta keep your eyes peeled.
If a report to junk, should it help lower the spam emails? It might, but the spammers change direction all the time. It can be very hard. especially if they start using legitimate accounts. The problem is then you may not be getting email from that person again in the future when they get their account back. Well, so don't respond to emails about this is your bill. What I'd say is if you're used to getting a bill from them, or if you're unsure, reach out to them. I mean, if I get a message from somebody that I do business with and I go, I don't think I should have a bill, I'll call them on the phone. Because the last thing you want to is to find out later that you're overdue on your bills because you've been ignoring them all.
So, does anyone else have any other questions? And I will put your contact email too in case people that are watching the recording has questions. So this is a great presentation. Okay, well, if another question pops in the chat, we can switch gears. But I know we wanted to do a little spotlight on your guys' upcoming conference. So I'll pop that up here quick if you guys want to chat a little bit about this.
You want to chat, Rusty, or you want me to?
Go ahead.
All right. So Tech Edge, one of the things we find is there is not enough technical conferences when it comes to Nebraska and Kansas. So we decided we put one on ourselves. Price is pretty darn cheap. It's hosted in Salina. And we'll have, it's one day. So we try and make it reasonable to get to and back. There'll be a lot of great information. If you don't want to come for any other reason, you can see we're going to have a lot of prizes.
Yes, and me and Tanya will be there. So, yep, Tanya said excited to attend and learn. Me as well. Anything else about the conference you want to touch base on? Is there a registration deadline by chance, or is it you can register up until that date?
Up until the date.
Beautiful. Highly recommended, everyone. You should go if you're able to. I don't see any other chats, so I guess we'll go ahead and wrap up for today's webinar. But thank you again, Justin, for taking time out of your day to present, and thank you to everyone that tuned in live and to everyone watching the recording. Thanks for tuning in at your own time and pace. Like I said, I'll have Justin's contact email if you have any other questions. And if you have any questions or need any resources for you and your business, feel free to give our store a call at that number provided, or you can contact me at zoe@grownebraska.org, and I'd be happy to help you out. We have some awesome upcoming trainings this next month in June. On June 5th, we'll have Maria, the Google gal, back, and she's going to cover Get Found, Got Growth, Get Found on Search, and Thrive Online. And then on June 20th, we'll have a USPS representative covering mastering e-commerce shipping in 2024. So if you ship a lot of packages out, highly recommend you get registered for that one. And then the fourth Thursday, June 27th, we'll have Josefina Loza back, and she will cover understanding your customer, market research for small businesses. So these are all live for registration at grownebraska.org. Under the upcoming trainings tab, or of course you can scan this QR code. And if you register now, you don't have to worry about it. You'll get reminder emails until that date approaches. And then feel free to follow Grow Nebraska on social media. As I always say, we're on TikTok, X, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. We post all our trainings to there. We post awesome Nebraska events such as the Next Tech Conference. And then we also promote Nebraska products that you can purchase. And then feel free to leave the Grow Nebraska Foundation a Google review and let us know how you're liking our services and if we've helped grow your business at all. But that is all my announcements. So thank you again, Justin, and thank you to everyone else. And I hope you have a great rest of your week.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.